The first video of any YouTube channel, no matter how successful, can really show you a lot about the content creator's original intention. I don't know if you've watched the first video on my channel, but if you haven't, it's a video of me and my girlfriend at the time, who happens to be my wife now, playing the old arcade game Burger Time off a 2-decade-old emulator with clunky controllers. As much as the premise was based on the idea of getting Kim more interested in video games, you can tell from even my own lack of burger skills that gameplay was never really this channel's focus. In fact, when you see two dorks never happier just laughing at each other's jokes, you find a channel not created out of some need of artistic expression, but merely a not-so-subtle hint to my girlfriend that maybe she should play with me more. We all have that one movie we want to share with a significant other, or if they want to get you, they have to watch it. For me, it was a game. Final Fantasy IX. Getting someone who isn't even used to holding a controller into an epic role-playing game of 40+ hours isn't exactly like sitting down to watch a Netflix show you think they'd like. After recording some footage of me playing it and attempting to show it to her like a movie, I ran into another obstacle. Kim's dyslexic, meaning after every line of dialogue we'd have to pause and read. It bummed me out that everything was working against me, and she might never experience this game and why it was so important to me. She would never become a fan of Final Fantasy IX. If you've ever had someone urging you to watch a movie, or heck, if you've been that someone, you know how annoying it can be for both people. And it's worse when the person being urged has no experience with the form of media that it comes in. So one day while we were making dinner together in the kitchen, she asked me, what about this game was so special to me? So I told her. But I knew better than to tell this woman with no experience in JRPGs, or video games for that matter, about the things that could scare her away. Like the nonsensical tropes that come with JRPGs, like talking mascots, spiky hair, magic technology. I'll tell you, half the reason I never got into Harry Potter was because while recommending it, those who love it tend to focus on all the dumb stuff that would scare away your average reader. I'm not just throwing shade at Harry Potter either. All fiction has its dumb stuff that can turn people away just as easily as bring them to it. So I didn't tell her about all that. I told her about the deceptively powerful themes of unrequited love, duty, dissent, and the inevitability of death, all illustrated through over-the-top characters who are broken in some way. And it's not until they come together that they can fight their demons, both personal and literal. So who do we have then? You have the leader whose baggage goes so far past being abandoned and homeless that he hides his true emotions with jokes, smiles, and inappropriate flirtations, but also doesn't need a reason to help people. You have a 6-year-old girl with no family who develops a crush on the main character, and does what all lonely people do. She lashes out at anyone who challenges her reality. You have the duty-bound soldier in denial that his leader is insane, or at least being manipulated. In this political landscape, I'm sure plenty of people can identify with him. You have the cynical bounty hunter who can't comprehend the idea of kindness from strong people in a cruel world. You have the princess who has to be the adult in a crazy family full of selfish moms and adulterous uncles, forced into responsibility through situation, not by choice. You have a shy 9-year-old child who has a severe identity and mortality crisis when he finds out he's not a child, but a literal doll come to life, living on very borrowed time. The scene where he attends a funeral gets me every time. His conversation with the village leader about what death means to the living hits me right in the gut. You have the prideful romantic, ever loyal to her country, but with a chip on her shoulder of having the love of her life missing in action. The love they shared is so cherished by her that when he shows up with no memory, she's willing to start all over again because what they had was that important. And then there's the genderless gourmand, probably the most emotionally healthy character in the game. Sure, they're played for laughs, but while everyone else is looking for where they belong in this crazy world, the gourmand just wants to travel the world and eat good food. And when the party pairs up in teams of 2, and the main character equates them to being stuck with leftovers, the gourmand just takes it as a compliment because leftovers are delicious. I want you to look yourself in the mirror and tell me that you don't identify with at least one of, if not many of these characters in some regard. We've all been unbearably awkward, lonely, rigid, cynical, rebellious, terrified, stubborn, or odd. But the truth is that, identifiable or not, these aspects only come into play after you allow yourself to be taken in by these worlds. And there are many reasons why we allow ourselves to reach the emotional core of a work of fiction. It may be too late for me to be as enraptured in the worlds of Lord of the Rings or Star Wars, because while I love them as franchises, the subject matter just didn't have the content or timing in my life to hit that deeper emotional core that would create the passion of fandom in me. Sometimes it's only by the slightest chance that you can become a passionate fan of something. Final Fantasy IX hit me when I was almost graduated from college. I was broke, lonely, and terrified of the future that life had for me. I had only tried the Final Fantasy series 2 years earlier, starting with 4 on a whim due to reputation alone. I really didn't like turn-based RPGs, and by all accounts I shouldn't have stuck with it. But I did. It's embarrassing to admit now, but the frame of mind of uncertainty allowed the emotional core of the series to reach me, and allowed me to become a huge fan. But the final push into fandom of Final Fantasy IV came in the form of the ability to name all of the characters. You've probably noticed by now that my party members, in the footage that I've shown so far, don't have their default names. In most of the first 10 Final Fantasy games, you have the ability to name every member of your team. I wasn't feeling particularly creative when I was introduced to this concept, so the first 2 characters you can name in Final Fantasy IV, the main character and his friend, I simply named after myself and my best friend. It then became a game within a game to see which one of my friends fit the personality of each character. Again, it's embarrassing, but from there, the escapism of going on a fantasy adventure with my friends just grew, to the point where I felt like the epitome of the series was Final Fantasy IX. Coincidentally, the last game in the franchise to allow you to name everyone in your party. It would also, coincidentally, be the game that series creator Hironobu Sakaguchi would see as his magnum opus. Life may have been freaking me out, and opening up about insecurity to my friends was difficult, but with Final Fantasy, I could put my friends and myself in the position to overcome these issues, taken to their ridiculous extremes. So while I was never raised to be a thief by a theater troupe, I did smile and joke to hide my true feelings. While I was never loyal to an insane queen, I did work for years at a job I was no good at, that I hated because of some mythical notion of job security. The truth is, I love my wife, and I love that she's a huge nerd for cheesy monster movies, but she won't be a fan of Final Fantasy IX like I'm a fan. She can't be a fan like I'm a fan, for the same reason I can't be a fan of Gamera like she is. Final Fantasy IX just hit me at the right time, in the right place, to make an emotional connection. And I don't mean to sound like I'm gatekeeping Final Fantasy. I feel the same way about you if you love it and you know every line of dialogue by heart, or if you love it and you don't know a single party member's name. I even feel the same about you if you absolutely hate the game. But either way, I encourage you to play Final Fantasy IX and form your own opinion. And I hope that the fact that I really like Final Fantasy IX is not the only thing that you take away from this. I started out wanting to express how much Final Fantasy IX meant to me, but then this became about something more. It became about fandom, how it gets planted, and how it can feed off your emotions to create something that sticks with you. And as insidious as that sounds, sometimes traveling to fictional worlds can really help you cope with everyday problems. I'm actually curious, what do you feel this strongly about? Do you like Final Fantasy IX? What fandom can you escape to for a little bit? Whatever it is, just make sure that after you escape, you come back to the real world and confront your problems.